I just counted and I'm in the middle of 21 book series. I think I have some reading to do. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of. Most of them I physically own, but there are some that I don't have any physical copies of that I still would plan on continuing, but they're not going to be like a top priority. So helping me out today is my handy dandy reading journal, and here I have my series tracker. So this is not all of the series that I am in the middle of. These are mainly just like my top priority series, kind of the ones that I am very interested in continuing. And there are some on here that I haven't started, such as like the Poppy War, but most of them I am in the middle of. But I just like using this as a visual way to track which series I'm in the middle of. Obviously, I use Goodreads, but sometimes it helps to have like a visual aid just to see like how far I am, how much longer I have to go until I'm fully completed. And I just love journaling, so why wouldn't I have one of these? So forgive me that my bookshelves look a complete mess behind me, but let's just jump right into it. So one of the top series that I'm most interested in continuing, and that is definitely a top priority for me, is the rest of the Throne of Glass series. So the next book I have to read in the series is Empire of Storms, but I'll also plan on doing the tandem read with Tower of Dawn, so I'll plan to read both of these together. It's very daunting and I am very intimidated, but I've heard it makes the experience, like the overall reading experience, a lot more enjoyable and a lot more emotional. And then after that, the last one I will have to complete is Kingdom of Ash, and I am not ready to have my heart broken in this, but I'm also just ready to know what happens, even though it is just a complete brick of a book. I know I will love every single second of it, and I definitely should not be flipping through it like that. That's very dangerous. So another Sarah J. Maas series that I'm currently in the middle of is the Crescent City series. So I have read this first book, House of Earth and Blood, and so the next book I left off on is House of Sky and Breath. I have yet to read this and the third book in the series, but I plan to very soon, especially since she just announced that the next ACOTAR book was being written. So obviously I want to catch up before I continue the ACOTAR series, which I am also in the middle of that one, but as the next book isn't out yet, I felt like I shouldn't even talk about it. Also, as most people probably know what those two series by Sarah J. Maas are about, I feel like I don't need to explain the synopsis, but for the majority of these, I will try to give a brief synopsis so you can see if you want to add it to your TBR. Next on the list, right up top, we have the Empyrean series. And I am planning to continue this series, but I definitely have lower expectations, especially after reading Onyx Storm. I did not like this book. I thought it was a complete waste of time, and I just wasn't really entertained by it. I just didn't really enjoy it. So I want to know what happens with the next two books in the Empyrean series, but I'm also not like biting at the bit to get my hands on the next one. I think I'll wait to see what other readers that I trust say and what their thoughts on it before I like pick it up. I don't think I'll like pre-order it, and it's kind of just gonna depend on how I'm feeling, honestly. But I plan on continuing it, but like I'm kind of 50-50 on that decision as well. Next, we have the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. So I have read Red Rising, and then the next one I have to read is Golden Sun, which is the sequel. So I know there's like technically two separate series in this world. The first one is like a trilogy, and then there's other books. And I know he's writing the last book right now, so I really want to like catch up if I can. But this series is also just really like dark in a way, and it's just very action packed, and I thoroughly enjoyed Red Rising. It was one of the first like sci-fi books I've heavily been intrigued by and that I like genuinely enjoyed, so I definitely want to continue the series. I'm dying to know what happens, but I'm also just kind of nervous at the same time. If you don't know, Red Rising follows the main character Darrow, who is a red. Basically, in this world, there is like a color-based caste system, and so Darrow is a red living on Mars. And so at the top of the food chain are the golds, and he essentially gets the chance to kind of be in a Hunger Games type situation in space to take a place as a gold. There's a lot more that goes on in this book than that, but I feel like that's a very vague, brief summary, enough to get you started, because really it's best to go into this book blind. You don't need to know much. And I also don't want to give anything away because it's just such a fun experience your first time reading this. So I have a lot of high hopes for Golden Sun. I think we left off in Red Rising at a very like cataclysmic point. Like so much is changing and so much had happened. And this one's a bit thicker too, so I'm scared. Okay, and then we have the Six of Crows duology. I have read Six of Crows, as you can see by my crazy annotations, but I have yet to read Croaking Kingdom, and everyone needs to yell at me to read this like right now. I've been just procrastinating it. I've been putting it off for so long just because I don't want it to end, and I love these characters so much that I just don't want to say goodbye to them. And if I'm being honest, I did kind of forget what happens in Six of Crows. Like, I remember things, but I don't remember enough to confidently go into Crooked Kingdom. So I guess I'm also just kind of waiting for the chance to refresh my memory, either reread this or watch a summary before going into this. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm not ready for it. Okay, before this stack gets out of sight, I'm going to head over to this side. So next we have the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. I feel like a lot of people know what this is about too, but I read the first two books, which are The Magician's Nephew and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So the next one I will start is The Horse and His Boy. And I listened to the first two on audiobook, and I really, really enjoyed that experience. It was a lot of fun, and they're just kind of like short, quick, really fun books. But I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's got great fantastical themes, and it feels like a very like classic fantasy story. So next we have the Mortal Instrument series by Cassandra Clare. I've actually read the first part of the Mortal Instrument series, so City of Bones, City of Ashes, and City of Glass. And then I'm taking a break because I'm going by the reading order that has you read the Infernal Devices series in between the Mortal Instrument series. So after I read the Infernal Devices, which I have not started, I'm going to continue with the Mortal Instruments. So I'd say I'm about halfway through this series, and I listened to audiobook for all three of them. They're definitely not my favorite books, but they were really enjoyable on audiobook. I feel like I was very entertained and I connected very deeply to our characters despite how annoying they were most of the time. And it's very much like a comfort series. Like, I don't see myself rereading them necessarily, but at least just like thinking about it a lot, I can say I have done that quite a bit. So next is the Kingdom of the Wicked series by Carrie Maniscalco. I read this first one a couple months ago and I decently enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It wasn't anything like too special or too crazy, but I enjoyed it overall. So this is another one where I'm not 100% that I'm going to be continuing the series, but it's always like an option for me if I want to finish a series, or if I want to pick up a sequel or something. If I get a TBR prompt, then maybe I can pick up the second one, but I'm definitely not like pulled. I'm not like dying to read the second book, but I have heard that the rest of the series gets a lot like spicier and gets better overall, so we'll have to see. Next up is the Fear the Flame series by Olivia Rose Darling. This is the first book, and the second book, Wrath of the Dragons, comes out I think in September of this year, 2025. I really loved this book. I'd asked for an art copy of it, which I did receive, and so I was very lucky to read this early, but of course I got the finished copy because I loved it. It's definitely not my all-time favorite fantasy story, but I will always recommend this one. I feel like it's somewhat underrated, and I feel like a lot of people who love ACOTAR or even like Throne of Glass a little bit will enjoy something like this. It's not super high stakes, it's definitely more cozy at times, and there's a very heavy found family aspect, which I enjoyed. The fantasy world building is all there. I just didn't deeply connect to it. Like, I loved it, but it's not like an all-time favorite like Throne of Glass where it just consumes me. But I definitely see myself like going back to this series and rereading this first book before the second book. Honestly, I probably won't get the chance to, but I definitely like see myself thinking about it a lot, and it's something that I will continue to recommend. Another big book on this list is the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is actually like an omnibus copy, so it's got all three books in this big one. So I've read The Fellowship of the Ring. I listened to that one on an audiobook. And so next up I have The Two Towers and Return of the King. Obviously, I've seen the movies like a million times, so I know what happens, and I'm actually impressed on how accurate the movies are to the original books. Like, when I was listening to it, I was like, wow, I can just picture it in my head. And so I'm really excited to get to The Two Towers. I think I just hesitate because it's just very long and just a lot of like lore, which I enjoy the Lord of the Rings lore, but sometimes I'm like, I can't even comprehend that right now. I definitely think I will listen to the audiobook for the remainder of this series. It's just the easiest way for me to digest it. So next we have the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. So I have read Caraval, and then next up I have Legendary. And this one, it surprised me at how like much bigger it is than Caraval. Caraval was one of my favorite books of 2024. I read it in December of last year, and I just could not put it down. I was just so enthralled with the story, and it was just so magical. So I'm super intrigued to pick up Legendary and see how we continue from there, although I know this follows Tella instead of Scarlet, so I'm curious to see what being in her perspective is going to be like, because I wasn't the biggest fan of her in the first book, but by the end I grew to enjoy her a bit, so we'll have to see. but I'm reading this in preparation to read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I know people say you don't have to read this one to get to that one, but I just want to know everything. I want to know all the lore and all the world building and things like that. So I'm excited. Back to this side, we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'm actually currently reading this book. So far, I'm not sure how I feel, but I just started it, obviously, so we'll have to see what I think by the end to see if I will want to continue. I just know the series is so beloved and just very cherished by its readers for how cozy and comforting it is, and I can definitely see that so far. I think I just tend to prefer more high stakes fantasy, so I'd say this is going to be one of my first cozier fantasies, where not a lot of action is happening. So I'm definitely curious to see what I think of this book and hopefully the rest of them. And then we have a duology. We have The Floating World by Axie O. I read this recently and I really, really enjoyed it. It's such a well-developed little YA fantasy series. So the second book comes out in October 2025, I believe, and I do have the art copy ready to go. The way I pitch it to people is Avatar: The Last Airbender meets Arcane meets Tangled. It's kind of like an Asian-inspired fantasy with a really unique magic system and also some quite dark tones at times. But basically you follow Ren, who is a traveling performer in a troupe with her family members, and she kind of realizes she has these powers after trying to defeat a demon. We also follow Sunho, who is an ex-soldier of this empire's military, and he kind of serves as a mercenary now. Sunho is tasked to hunt down Ren after her magic is discovered, and things happen. That's all I'm going to say, but it's very, very good. I thought the connection between the main characters was very real. It felt believable, and they felt like real people, which was really refreshing because I felt like the relationship wasn't rushed. And that's one thing I still commend YA series with doing, is that they make their characters seem whole individually before making them fall in love. I feel like a lot of romantasy books now will just make them fall in love and then try and flesh out their characters, so it was nice to see one do the opposite. As you can see, I have a pattern of just reading first books in a series and then barely continuing with them, so yet another one is the Heavenly Body series by Amani Ariu. This is the old self-published copy. It has been since traditionally published, and the sequel, which is called Fallen Stars, comes out in November, and I am desperately awaiting my pre-order. This was probably my favorite book of 2024. I absolutely loved it, and it's probably one of my top fantasy romantasy book recommendations. It's set in a world with a Zodiac-inspired magic system, or a Zodiac-inspired world, and so we follow the main character Alara, who has shadow magic, as she has to flee her kingdom and take refuge in her enemy's kingdom, which has sun light powers, because she is hiding from one of the stars, who is basically a god, and he has taken over Alara's country because he believes the prophecy that she will fall in love with him and then kill him. I desperately need more people to read this book because it is so good. It is so well done. It did everything right, in my opinion. It's just one of those books that just feel magical the whole time. Yeah, another book that felt magical the whole time was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, which is one of my most recent reads, one of my most recent 5 stars. This is the first in the Shepherd King duology, and I am itching to get my hands on Two Twisted Crowns because a lot of people say that that one is even better, and I just need to know why. I connected to these characters so much, and it felt like the first time in a while that I was really obsessed with the characters, and I really was into the relationship, and I was just so attached to them. So it was nice to have that feeling, which is probably why I gave it 5 stars, but overall the magic system in this was just so compelling and different than anything I've read. And also the gothic kind of moody atmosphere of the book was very well written, and I just felt like I was there. There was so much mist. Every time I read it, I felt like I was in the Kingdom of Wonder, and it was just so good. So moving out of fantasy, the rest of the books I have to talk about are not. So we have the entire Good Girls Kind of Murder series. I've actually read the first book and then the second book, and so then I left off on the final book, and then I have the novella as well. So mainly just these 2 is what I have left. I read these first 2 so quickly. These first 2 books were so fast-paced and engaging for me. I felt like I had the murder board in my mind the entire time. So I'm really curious to see what I think of As Good as Dead. And Pip is probably one of my favorite main characters I've ever read. She's just so interesting to me and just feels like a real person. If I were to meet her and sit down with her, I feel like I would be friends with her. I don't know. Again, I feel like this is one that a lot of people have read or at least know about, maybe even from the TV show. And next up, we have a young adult dystopian series, which I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this series, or not a lot of people have read it maybe, but it is the Legend series by Marie Lu. This used to be really popular back in like the OG like booktube days, I think, but I read this first one a couple years ago and it was good. I wasn't super obsessed with it, but I feel like for a dystopian, it was really well written. And I feel like I definitely see why it was popular back in the kind of OG dystopian days with Divergent and everything. So the rest of the series I have to complete is Prodigy and Champion, and these books are a bit thicker, so I don't know when I'll get to them. I'm definitely considering listening to these on audiobook though. Just I don't really gravitate towards them. Like if I'm looking for a physical book to read, I'd probably pick these ones last. But basically we follow two characters in this, June and Day, and June is the daughter of I think a really important person in this government, and she also has a brother. And Day is kind of among the slums. He's poor, he's not very high class, but everything changes when June's brother is murdered and Day becomes the prime suspect. So they're kind of thrown together and they form a really interesting relationship. To be honest, I don't remember much about this book, so I might have to re-listen to it before I dive into the rest of the series, but I really enjoyed it when I read it the first time. It's just been so long. And then the last series that I physically own copies of, before I get into the rest of them, is the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco. I've read the first 3 books, and so the final book I have to complete is the last one, which is Capturing the Devil. And truly, I think I am just really holding off on this because I love Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell so much. They are just like my top nostalgia characters. Because I started reading this series when I was a freshman in high school. I vividly remember sitting in my English class and we were doing independent reading time, and I read Stalking Jack the Ripper. And then I remember during COVID, I read Hunting Prince Dracula. And then I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, I read Escaping from Houdini. And so this is my last one. And I think it just really reminds me of high school. And now that I'm about to graduate college next year, I'm kind of just hanging on to that little sliver, that little thread of nostalgia. So I'm curious to see how we wrap up things from the ending of Escaping from Houdini, because our characters didn't really end up on the best of terms during that one. So this being the final one, I'm just kind of scared on how it's going to all wrap up, but I've loved every book so far, so I have a feeling I'll love this one too. Alright, and now we move into the book series that I don't physically own copies of, so that is where my reading journal comes in. So one of the top ones that I can think of is the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. This is probably one of the only romance series that I've started and I'm like actively continuing. Again, I feel like a lot of people know what this one is, but in case you don't, it is a cowboy romance series and it follows a different couple in each book. So I've read 3 out of the 5 books. I've read Flawless, Heartless, and Powerless, and out of those 3, Heartless is definitely my favorite. I feel like I connected to Cade and Willa's relationship the most. So the next ones I have to read are Reckless and Hopeless, and I'm really excited for those 2 just because I feel like they're characters that I'm not too familiar with, so I feel like my perceptions of them and my opinions on them from previous books aren't going to be too skewed. Because when I read Powerless, which follows, what's his name, Jasper and Sloane? See, if that tells you anything, it's that I just don't really remember them too much because I didn't really care. But we met Jasper in Flawless, and he was an interesting character to me, but by the time I got to his book, I felt like I knew him too well, and I just didn't care to read any more about him. So that one was kind of boring to me, so I'm excited to see what the rest of them have to say. But now I'm going to check my Goodreads to see what other series that I might be forgetting. So another different genre and format, we have the Saga series by Brian K. Vaughan. This is a graphic novel series, and it is sci-fi. Basically, we have 2 different characters that are from warring planets, but they fall in love and they have a child, which inevitably puts them like on a hit list, and they are just hunted for the entire series. So I think I left off on volume 7 is my last one that I need to continue from. This series is so fast-paced, it's action-packed, and it has a bunch of different types of characters. Like there's different races in the sci-fi world, which is really intriguing to read about because we get to see different types of planets and cultures on these planets, and then like what these races look like and how they interact with each other in war or in like, I guess, espionage. And I just thought it was really unique, so I'm really excited to continue the series, and honestly, I need to right now. So another one that I forgot of that I do own a physical copy of is The Falconer by Elizabeth May. This is the old young adult version of this series. It's actually been republished in like a new adult style, which is what the author originally wanted to write her books in. So I haven't read the updated version of the first book yet, but the rest of the books have come out, I believe. So I'd like to revisit that series, restart it, and just really see what I think of the new versions, because when I read this first one, I really loved it. The main character named Aliana Cameron, and she's kind of like a lady of this important house in Scotland, but her mother was Fae, but her mother was murdered. So she's very connected to the world of the Fae, and it also writes fairies and just Fae overall very differently from anything I've read. And there's a romance in here, but I definitely could tell when it was being like really pushed down for the sake of the plot. So I'm excited to see how that romance really comes forward in the new version of the series. Those are the 21 series that I'm in the middle of. I think I counted that right. But let me know if you are currently reading any of these series as well, or if you finished them, what are your thoughts? Do you recommend me continuing? Do you think I should stop? I definitely think I need to get better at continuing series I'm in the middle of, because I've noticed that I just tend to stop at book 2 and then I wait too long and I forget what happens, and I really want to break that habit. So that is my goal going forward. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and comment your thoughts on any of these books, and I will see you in my next video.